This is a video for the Incas. It begins on page 602. Geography shapes life. Many people lived in the Andes region before the Incas arrived. High mountains shaped the way of life for them and the Incas. Life in the Andes. The Andes are a mountain range along the western edge of South America. These huge mountains are a hard place for people to live. The slopes are rocky and steep. The climate is cold. Breathing is difficult because the air is thin at high elevations. The Incas and others before them adapted to these harsh conditions. We can see on the map on the right side an image of how the Andes run along South America and the two oceans that border South America. Other geography. A narrow desert lies between the Andes and the Pacific Ocean. The world's largest rainforest, the Amazon, lies to the east of the Andes. These provided resources for the Andean people. Andean agriculture. The first advanced cultures of South America appeared in the Andes region long before the Incas. As in other places, agriculture led to the growth of civilization. Andean peoples farmed lands along rivers. They also farmed the hillsides by cutting terraces, or strips of level land that are planted with crops. Irrigation canals carried water to terraces. With this technology, people grew more food, including corn, chili peppers, squash, beans, cotton, peanuts, and hundreds of types of potato. Andean people hunted game on the mountain slopes and fished in the nearby ocean. Farmers raised llamas and alpacas, which are related to the camel. Andean people used llamas for meat and to carry large loads. Alpacas provided soft wool. The Incan Empire. The Incas built an empire in the 1400s and 1500s by taking over the lands of other peoples. Their success was partly due to their well-organized society. The Incan Empire grows. Historians believe the Incas settled in the valley of Cusco in present-day Peru around 1200. Over the next 300 years, they built a great empire led by a series of warrior kings called the Sapa Incas. The greatest Sapa Inca was Pachacuti, who took power in 1438. Under Pachacuti, the Incas built a powerful army. Marching into battle, soldiers often sang bloodthirsty songs to terrify their enemy. One such song began, "We'll drink from your skull, from your teeth we'll make a necklace, from your bones, flutes." A strong army helped the Incas expand, but they preferred not to use it. Pachacuti offered peace and protection to those who agreed to join the empire. They kept their local rulers and customs. In return, they paid taxes in the form of labor and accepted Incan authority. Pachacuti ruled for more than 30 years. A strong government. Inca government was centered in Cusco. Below the Sapa Inca, 4 governors each ruled a province. Below them, the administration was based on multiples of 10. Each village was divided into groups of 10 families. Those were organized into larger groups of 100, 1,000, and 10,000 families. A government official was responsible for each group. The Incan government took responsibility for the well-being of its people. In times of crisis, such as a crop failure or natural disaster, officials distributed food and clothing. These goods came from storehouses spread out across the empire. But these benefits came at a price. People had little freedom. Unifying the empire. The Incas forced their language, Quechua, on conquered peoples. This helped to unify the empire. It was only spoken, however. There was no written language. Official messengers sped reports across the empire. They often carried a quipu, a record-keeping device made of knotted strings. The Incas used quipus to keep records of people or goods. The messengers traveled quickly along a system of roads built throughout the empire. Soldiers could be sent along the roads to put down rebellions. The end of the empire. The last great Sapa Inca, Huayna Capac, took power in 1493. By this time, the Inca Empire stretched 2,500 miles from north to south. It may have included as many as 10 million people who lived mostly in peace. This time of peace did not last long. Huayna Capac died between 1525 and 1530 without arranging a successor. 2. of Huayna Capac's sons fought to decide who would take his place. Their brutal civil war shattered the Incan world. The war had barely ended when Spanish soldiers invaded. The weakened empire fell to the invaders, called conquistadors. Incan achievement. The Incas achieved great feats in architecture, astronomy, and metalwork. Architecture. The Incas were great architects. They built with huge stone blocks. They cut the blocks with great precision, using only stone tools. Each stone fit in place perfectly. No mortar was needed to hold the blocks together. Many Incan buildings still stand after hundreds of years. Incan cities were marvels of stone architecture. The Incan capitals of Cusco was filled with great palaces and temples. Cusco was grand and stately, wrote an early Spanish visitor. It had fine streets, and the homes were built of solid stones, beautifully joined. The Incas' greatest engineering feat was their road system. Incan roads stretched more than 15,000 miles across the empire. They crossed deserts, mountains, and jungles. They also spanned rivers on bridges that swung from cables. In some places, floating bridges rested on pontoons. Incan roads, often paved with stone, were very durable. Today, they can still be seen in parts of the Andes. Arts and crafts. The Incas called gold the sweat of the sun and silver tears of the moon. With these metals, they crafted jewelry, dishes, statues, and wall decorations. Here is how a Spaniard described the Temple of the Sun in Cusco. The doors were covered with sheets of gold. There was an image of the sun of great size made of gold, beautifully wrought and set with precious stones. The Incas valued textiles even more than gold. They wove richly colored patterned cloth out of cotton, alpaca, and vicuña. Vicuña is an animal similar to the llama and alpaca. Like the alpaca, it has rich, soft fur. Today, descendants of the Incas still produce beautiful textiles using ancient techniques and designs. Science. Like other ancient peoples, the Incas were skilled in astronomy. Astronomy is the study of stars, planets, and other heavenly bodies. The Incas made careful observations of the locations of different groups of stars. Many of the stars and planets were linked to gods and myths of their religion. The Incas also studied movements of the sun and moon to develop calendars. They were used to decide when to plant crops or celebrate festivals. They knew which days of the year had the most and fewest hours of daylight, and on which days daylight and night were equal. Incan society. Incan society was marked by strong government, religion, and a class system. Social order. Incan society was divided into two large classes, nobles and commoners. Each class had its own hierarchy. A hierarchy is a system for ranking members of a group according to their importance. The highest-ranking nobles were close relatives of the ruling family. They lived in the finest houses, enjoyed the best food and clothes, and held the highest positions in government. The lower ranks of nobles held lower government positions. These included non-Incan local leaders. Most non-Incan peoples were commoners. They were divided into categories based on age and gender. Each category had its own work and duties. For example, boys between the ages of 12 and 18 herded llamas and alpacas. Girls aged 9 to 12 gathered wild plants for dyes and medicines. Men aged 25 to 50 raised crops and served as soldiers. Economy. Incan society was organized into ayulas. The ayulu was a group of related families that pooled resources to meet people's needs. It owned and distributed land. The leader distributed food and materials to make sure that everyone received the goods they need. There was no money, so people paid taxes with labor. This was called the mita system. Under the Incas, the ayulu's land was divided into three parts, one for the government, one for the priests and gods, and one for the people. Members of the ayulu farmed government and religious lands to pay the mita. The government saved the crops for the army, times of famine, and ceremonies. Inca religion. The Incas worshipped many gods. The most important was Inti, the sun god. The Incas believed they were descended from Inti. The Sapa Inca was honored as Inti's descendant and a living god. As long as they honored the Sapa Inca, conquered people were allowed to worship their own deities